Thank you to Union Pacific for their generous support as a sponsor of the NHI Podcast Network.
Tercera realidad, mi libertad. Mi tercera realidad no es vanidad. Un mundo mío es mi sueño.
This is NHI Notables with Ernesto Nieto, recorded at the National Hispanic Institute in Maxwell, Texas.
So here we are, National Hispanic Institute, doing another session of the NHI Notables. I'm Ernesto Nieto. I'm here with Julio Cotto and our very special guest, AJ del Cueto. I'm going to ask Julio to take us back to a remembrance of who these guys were, because AJ had breakfast with Gloria this morning, and I'm not going to reveal what she said in private, but I'm going to remind you guys, maybe AJ, well, you can hear his laughter when I bring up the name. But you were talking about there were several guys and several key people that are very well known in the NHI community that went to Austin College later. So can you bring us back? And what year are we talking about here, Julio?
You use the word community right now, and I think that within NHI, there are these little sub-communities that, you know, or little groups of friendships. And so when I did the Texas LDZ as a staff member, there was this little group that I think I had met the previous summer of young guys from San Antonio, and they were
What year are we talking about?
It's gonna be like 99, 2000, but it was 2000, and they were all on the staff, and it was AJ del Cuetos, Luis Gonzalez, who some people know, the Edie in California, Manny Escobar, who some people knew Annalise, who worked here for a while, but Manny in his own right, he works in hotels and hospitality, and Rene Gonzalez from San Antonio, and they were. Some of you guys were at Central Catholic.
Manny and I were.
And so, but they were part of that. I think that group that really helped grow what a lot of NHI San Antonio is now, this big, huge monster of a organization. There were guys like this little group of guys that really helped build that culture up.
They were the predecessors.
They were the predecessors. I think a lot of you see.
You mentioned other names. That were like Victor Arias.
Well, and then that very next summer, after that group, they're in high school. As a freshman, AJ comes back to become an intern, sponsored, I think, by Santa Clara.
Yeah.
Victor Arias, who was also a college student, NHI from Dallas, was sponsored by Austin College, and he was here that summer. And so we just had a crazy summer of just lots of travel and good conversations. And so that's one of probably the last times that we probably spent a lot of time here with AJ.
So Gloria spends a lot of time relating to former participants, and she really needs to be congratulated. Even though she's my wife, she really does spend a lot of time relating and continuing to cultivate old friendships. And as we were leaving, and AJ, we were leaving breakfast in Kyle, she turned to me and she said, they were part of what was y'all's name? The LDZ Gods.
I never heard that one before.
Because I remember you four guys would get up in front of the girls and all the guys, and y'all would dance up on stage.
We would dance to DLG and Our Way of Vedas during talent night.
That's right.
Because we love to dance.
So what was it that brought, aside from just being in school, like what was it that brought you guys so close together? And I mean, it was all within NHI.
I mean, they were all high schoolers at the time.
We were like friends. Like Renee and I were friends. Our mothers were friends. They had gone to like Leadership San Antonio together. They were kind of both leadership oriented, trailblazing Latinas in their own careers and whatnot. So they kind of got us into it. And so Renee and I were friends already before through family. And then I was going to school at Central, and Manny was my friend at school. And then we all started going to, I think Renee had been a year before us. So he was actually a junior counselor for us, our YLC year. And that's, being with the other Gonzalez family, with Analco and Luis. And they were really kind of the hub that allowed us all to continue that social and philanthropic and giving back to the community, learning about these things, and then I guess and Humberto Aguilera was also one of the ones who was dancing up there with us. And we were all we went through YLC together. So we had that, and that bonds you. And then it just kind of kept going. And we all were participants and counselors in every program from YLC to CWS. And I'm sure somebody went to Guanajuato or something for the Spanish language program. But that was the only one I didn't get to do.
Well, I think didn't you guys also like finish your LDZ and then you got in the car to do CWS?
Yeah.
You guys were junior counselors and then got in the truck and drove up to Dallas to do CWS. Yeah. So they were just nonstop.
It was it was a strange like coalescence of friendship and like work that we were doing, and it was great. It really felt like we were beginning something at the time.
Yeah, and so you in your case, you go to Santa Clara, and of course, then the tragic news of your mother getting ill, and you move back to Texas, and you end up going to UT.
Yeah, I had wanted to get out and explore out of high school, and everybody was applying to UT. And I just kind of was, do I want college to be another high school? Let me try to push myself. And I was already, I think, in my mind, wanted to be in film. And so there was an allure of California. And I think even Nicholas Gonzalez, who also went to my high school, he went out to California after he graduated and whatnot.
He went to Stanford.
He went to Stanford. And so there was... that seemed like the way to go if I wanted to do something creative. Because I don't know. I think this is all something we were talking about with Gloria, is that sometimes maybe it's not just in Texas, but you kind of get pushed into these like more STEM related careers. Mine particularly was being a lawyer, because my cousin is a lawyer, and it's a very respectable position to have. And when I came to visit Texas, I happened to visit some of my old friends, Humberto actually, at UT Austin. And I decided, if I'm going to come back to Texas, this is the only place I will come. So then I transferred, and that was probably one of the best decisions I ever made too. It helped give me a very small liberal arts experience in college, and then a major university experience at the same time. But there was a big transition there, going from a very small setting to a very large setting.
AJ, what was your vision, and what was the beginning and the startup of your vision that eventually leads you into the idea of filmmaking and production? And what were some of the building blocks or building experiences? Because you're right, most NHRs go into pretty established careers to become engineers, doctors, attorneys, teachers, college professors, architects. Nicholas Gonzalez didn't, and you didn't. Y'all took a different route. What were some of the things that led to that decision, you think?
Well, that's a tough one, because I think that it was seeing somebody like a Nick being able to do it. I've always kind of not wanted to do what everybody else is doing, I think. So if everybody was going to go to UT, it's like, why? Like, let's try something else. And it was, it's really hard to say. I guess I grew up, it's probably just your experience. Your experience does kind of educate you, even if you know it or not. And my experience was watching lots of movies when I was a kid. Just my dad left me in my room with a bunch of VHSs, and that's pretty much all I did. So I kind of grew to know and understand a language of images, and I would always, I guess, as an athlete growing up, you're always kind of performing in front of crowds and whatnot, and you get used to being in that position. So if you're sitting at a desk somewhere in front of a computer, those experiences are no longer being communicated to by just sitting in front of a computer. You want to be out talking to people or making something.
Well, what was that creative part? I'm curious and pursuing that line of thought. Filmmaking is also kind of a career. Yes, it is creative. Yes, you do have to explore imageries and try to make sense of things. What drove that interest is what I'm curious.
I think there's a lot of power that's there. I wanted to be a writer, really. I was writing a lot of bad poetry when I was in high school. And
weren't we all?
Yeah. And so I knew I wanted to be a writer. I was like really into like the novelists, like early American novels and theater in the written form. And I guess I was taking some classes and not really, everybody says print's dead. I mean, this was 10 years ago when before that really took place the way it has now. And I had a friend who was probably one of the smartest girls I ever met. And she was like, film's the new text and whatnot. And I was like, you're right. And it's easier for me to write a screenplay than it's more like a poem than writing a novel. So let's try that. And luckily I was in the honors program at UT and I had amazing professors that didn't want me to write a ridiculous paper, 12-page essay that I'm not good at doing anyway. She's like, you want to write a play? Then write a play. And so I wrote a play and then I made a painting, and that was encouraged by my professor. And she gave me the space to do that. And so it kind of opened a new reality to me that I don't have to try to figure out the answer or the right structure to this. In the world, you can create things and it has value. And it's all about who or what you're trying to do at the given time. And so she saw in me that I wanted to tell stories and I wanted to write them. So she gave me that because she knew I couldn't write a 12-page essay for very well. Or that's where my heart wasn't. But
how'd you make the jump to New York from there?
I didn't really have a plan. After my mom passed my senior year, I was kind of coming to the realization, I don't want to be a lawyer. I don't want to do these things. I want to do whatever's going to get me out of bed in the morning. And I had just kind of been exploring more of these creative classes, and I got caught up with some of the theater crowd at UT and made great friends with an amazing playwright, and I was in a play my senior year, and it started just kind of opening new things, new places I had never been before. And once you lose something that important to you, you're kind of like, all bets are off. Let's do the thing that's going to make me get out of bed. Because you only get one chance at this, So, and I think also as a philosophy major, I was reading a lot of existentialism, and it was freaking me out. So, so I was kind of like, you got to do
all
it.
Of us.
You got to do it. And so I'm very sensitive to what I'm experiencing or studying at a given time. I think that sensitivity hopefully informs whatever work or art I try to create. But that was some pretty scary times during existentialism class my senior year.
Yeah, my existentialist phase.
Yeah.
So you point northeast. Yeah. I think that was the question.
At the end of school, everybody was just picking up and moving to New York, and I was kind of didn't want to get left behind, so I just moved to New York with all my friends because I had this previous plan when I was at in San Antonio, what my plan was going to be. I was going to go to California for undergrad and then go to New York for grad school, study film. But that kind of life gets in the way. I went to California, ended up back in Austin, which has a film community and it's growing. It's amazing. But at the time, it didn't feel like there was quite enough of that here. So I was like, I'm going to get back on my plan and I'm going to go to New York and go to film school. And I did that, and I took 2 suitcases and slept on my friends' couches and looked for work and an apartment, which was actually, I ended up having to take the leap of, I had sold my car here and like just had to get an apartment without a job and have faith that I could make that happen, because it was like impossible to find a place to live and a job at the same time. It's like both of those are full-time jobs. So kind of went on a ledge, got the apartment in the Lower East Side, little closet, and started interning at production company. And because most of the people, when I was in college, I had been watching lots of movies and the behind the scenes and listening to the commentary. And most of the filmmakers that I ever respected didn't go to film school. They've been making film since they were 5 years old or 8 years old, at home. And I think it was probably even we had Robert Rodriguez come to our high school and talk to us when he had just, it was after Desperado, and I think he was still trying to get Chupacabra off the ground and whatnot. But hearing somebody like that who went to high school in San Antonio too, those are, I guess it was also something my dad kind of raised me with, is like, if they can do it, I can do it. And so you find these little role models
and
in
he
life.
Wasn't in the film program, right?
Who?
Robert Rodriguez.
No, he just did it. That was the thing. And those were, I've focused on that my whole life, where just do it, because fake it till you make it. I mean, and it keeps coming back around. I listen to podcasts and hear about people's experiences, and that's really what it is a lot of times. A lot of people who deserve something don't ever get it. And some people who try their whole lives to do one thing might not ever get it. But if you have the opportunity or you want to do something, you have to try. Or like you were saying, Ernie, about regret, and you don't ever want to have that.
Yeah, that's the big fear. That's something that you want to do.
And now for a quick break.
The National Hispanic Institute is an organization with a 37-year history of working to change the social narratives of our young Latinas and Latinos, to help them envision a new America, a new Latino community, a new direction, and a different kind of culture. We want our young people to be inspired by who they are and see the asset value of our culture and these 800 million people in this vast amount of land that starts all the way in Canada and goes all the way to the tip of Argentina.
Our hope for an alum is that that they have the mindset of giving back to their community, that they want to help, they want to contribute. And B is that they realize this throughout their entire lives and make leadership part of their overall journey throughout their whole life.
The National Hispanic Institute has been part of my life for as long as I can remember. It has literally educated and re-educated an entire generation or two now of young Latinos and their allies around the country, around the world, to think about our community and think about our role in the community as being change agents and ultimately in advancing the cause and the needs of our community.
Personally, the National Hispanic Institute has helped me reach goals and do things that I didn't think I was going to be able to do before.
And so what we did was create these learning experiences where young people could learn to be in charge of things.
We just encourage people to go way beyond a career in life. We want to see them have a community calling.
NHI is a place where I come and I have to learn, how do I pass on values?
And then the benefit of that self-belief that it's possible. Things are possible for all of us, and that we can contribute to the success of others.
We look at the richness of our community, at its value, at its capacities, and we go from that point forward. We don't want our young people to look at themselves and their communities and look down. We want them to look up and be inspired.
And now back to the conversation.
I wanted to get your views on where you think Latinos are in the film industry.
They're everywhere.
They're involved, engaged, emerging?
Emerging, yeah, I think so. I have had a interesting relationship with that idea, I think, since the beginning. And I remember early on in the film industry, because I was also like, right when I was getting out of school, I had just done some plays, and we're all trying to decide what we were going to be. I'm going to be an actor. I'm going to be a director. I want to be a producer. And most of us aren't going to get any of those jobs. We're going to get like assistant to an assistant of something, or of a producer or an editor or something. You get your first job or something, or a PA. And I kind of lost my train.
Well, the idea had to do with
Latinos in film.
Where are they?
Where
Yeah, there. It's just, yeah. I mean, at the time, at least the roles weren't there. They were either you were being portrayed in a certain light. It was like on Law and Order. It's like, oh, well, he's the perpetrator, or And there were like there were actors back in the day who were Latino, but they didn't say, they said they were white, because that was easier. And some people in the industry, you don't even realize that they are Latino until they say it on their social media or something. But they're there. It's growing. But I've always felt like even Latinos as a culture is we're a mixture of things, and everybody's got a little bit of it in them, and whether they like to admit it or not. So, but there are more leading roles that are positive, and I still think that there's room to grow in the producer world. I don't really know that there's that many. I mean, we have some amazing directors. I don't know that they all live here in America. But they're emerging. I always thought they were here. That's always been my kind of thing, is like we were here a long time ago.
Well, and in San Antonio, you can always see those things.
Yeah, it's like it's weird your experience, because like San Antonio, I feel like has just always been that way, and so I'm used to Latinos being everywhere. They like Henry Cisneros was our mayor, and like all these city council members, and they permeate the whole region. But when I was a kid, I didn't see those role models on television or in movies the way I wanted to. I wanted to bring those stories out, or be that character, or at least have control over that in the future. Because if you don't, then people will write your story however they like. And if it's if there are things that you want to say and it's part of your culture, then you have the right to say it, and you should say it. Because I don't think there are enough voices out there.
I was sharing with you my vision about NHI being a legitimate institute where young people learn certain things that are not part of the college or high school experience. Mm-hmm. That has to do with courage and inspiration, with vision, with character building, things of that nature. And I really feel as if though you can build an entire institute around that. That happens to be my vision. I was asking you about yours. So fast forward 20 years, and you've been in the business 32 years and thereabout. Where do you see AJ Del Cueto? Where would you like to see him?
Well, I would like to be making like feature films and commercials in Texas. I'd like to have a studio back here in my home state where I can create projects and also potentially be a place where people can come and learn those particular types of skills. I guess maybe it's because of my experience going through NHI. It's always been a teach and learn, and that carries through life. And it's it's being self-aware. It's like a feedback, and that's like the only way you can be successful, I think. Otherwise, you create something, it gets real big, and it turns into something else. And I want to be making the content or the movies and commercials that people are going to see, young Latinos are going to see, and they're going to see themselves doing whatever they want. Whereas when I grew up, those images weren't really there. I mean, so I would like to have the ability to create stories that aren't traditional sometimes, or remembering. I love historical dramas. I love, like, there's a lot of history here in this state, and our people have been through lots of things throughout that time, and it's important for us to reveal these stories that before they get lost, because there are a lot of instances in the past where all sorts of people have done courageous things, men, women, people that were not allowed to have agency, what they created out of it, and yeah, just participating in a positive expression of the culture.
What do you think the NHI experience exposed you to?
Well, it definitely exposed me to
some good people,
a lot of great people all over the state. I mean, I think back to my experience in high school, and we live in one of the biggest states in the country, and I knew people in El Paso and in Brownsville and in Corpus Christi, and actually, it was pretty hilarious when we would be at LDZ and they would put the city where everybody was from, and I'm like, Flower Mound, or like what? Like they just come up with
where's that?
Like, where is this place? Or like just like you could just put anything.
Is that it's by Dallas, right? Flower Mound.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there's just a lot of places that you don't even know exist, and then you've met some really amazing person who turns into like Mary Gonzalez in El Paso, who's now a state representative. And it's like, yeah, well, we went to LDZ together or YLC. And I remember we had a great time. And so that is huge. There are still people who never leave their town. They don't have to be, they never leave San Antonio, or they never leave Austin, or they never leave the state, or they went to that one place one time. But my whole experience was going down to the valley and visiting Tino, because we used to play St. Joseph's down there. And and I still see him, even when he comes up to San Antonio and I happen to be at Central or something. I think I saw him at the last homecoming game or something like that. Yes, that's right. And it's just like, I would never have had that experience. I mean, Tino giving us even more experience, taking us down to Mexico when we were 16 or 17, I don't remember, but it's kind of like, it was a whole...
That's unofficial. That's unofficial.
Unofficial. I think
tacos.
We were
the
totally...
Tacos are great,
18, yeah. But it was a great... It's an exposure to... I think it's exactly what you wanted it to be. And those stories that you would tell us about how the games that other cultures do to teach their kids how to survive in this world. I mean, I was lucky enough to go to a school where they try to tell you a little bit more than I would say the average school on life skills and stuff like that. But there is, being able to sit in the state capitol, like as a senator or as a, we were in the Supreme Court chambers. That's incredible. And so when I ended up doing like an internship for the state, like one of my last summers, I lived in Texas, and I was right back there in the state capitol, and it wasn't like, I had already had that experience, and I didn't feel intimidated by things, and getting up in front of everybody and making speeches. You kind of do that if you run for student council and when you're in high school. But, honestly, I think getting up and us performing the little salsa dances, that was really the thing that
did the
LDZ Gods. Yeah.
That's what really got me out of my shell. And it's
but it's funny to go back to NH. And I think why Gloria likes the story of these guys getting up and doing their little salsa dance with guayaberas is because, especially in that time, they could have gotten up and danced to some pop song, or some an English language song, or they could have put on very like just urban jerseys, or they could have put on some Spurs stuff. I mean, they got up and they danced Latino music to the kids. And they made it cool.
Gloria has been very key to all of that in terms of the symbols, in terms of the environment, because I don't know if you guys remember this, but at every dance, Gloria and I would always make a point to go dance a polka.
Yeah.
And the reason we did is because it was so old-fashioned. Oh, my God. You're dancing a polka, and it was so funny watching these young kids then try to mimic us.
I got dragged on as an LDZer, this Pennsylvania kid.
These kids had never done a
Valley
polka.
people come dance.
Yeah, they'd never done a polka in their lives, and they look ridiculous. But before long, the entire 200 kids were out in the dance floor dancing polkas and being exposed to a beautiful part of their past and a beautiful part of their history and a beautiful part of their culture, right? And they could relate it to themselves. They could relate it to their parents. They could relate it to their grandparents. And so that was the reason. This was planned. This was not, Gloria would say, "Are you ready?" I knew what that meant. It's just like the day she was directing us, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, yes, I'm ready. And we'd have to go out there and dance. But today you told a great story about you went back years later and you see some kids with NHI badges on. Can you tell Julio about that? I think it's a great story.
I was in Austin because I come home 2 or 3 times a year. And I guess I was just in Austin walking through UT campus. I was probably showing somebody, this is where I went to school and this was our gym and this is the biggest dorm in, the Western civilization. Yeah. It's like, there's a jester. And then all of a sudden I see these like well-dressed students walking with lanyards, and I see it says NHI, and I'm like, "Hey, take me to your masters." They're like, I'm like, "Where are you guys from?" And they're like, "San Antonio or something." And so they take me upstairs, all up into Jester, and I'm in this room, and all of a sudden I open the door, and it's Luis Gonzalez Analco and Anita and Olivia and it was just like the whole gang, the whole family right there.
And you're just
like, hey, yeah, and had hugs and, great times. And so, yeah.
This guy named Frank Garza, who went to the LDZ in 1984, was in LA. And he was in the airport getting ready to come back. And he saw a bunch of kids crying. And they were all wearing the lanyards and all that.
Yeah.
And he didn't realize that we were then, by this time, we'd only been in Texas, right, for many years. You went essentially when we were mostly in Texas. Mm-hmm. But now we were in California. And a lot of people, he didn't realize that we had spread over there. And he goes, "Well, I guess they're now national." And I said, "Yeah, we're now international because it's the same thing." I was in Monterrey one day, and I was coming down the elevator of this hotel. And these 2 girls kept smiling at me. And I kept smiling at them. They wanted to say something. And they were young girls. And they finally said, "Señor Nieto, ¿verdad?" And I go, "Yeah." We went to the LDZ, and there we go. It's like this huge family all over the world. I was with Nicole one day, and we were in Spain. And we were out with her friends, like 2 or 3 in the morning. And I heard mariachi. And we went into this bar. And there were people from NHI in that bar at that time at 3 o'clock in the morning in Madrid, Spain. And that's when I finally said, they're all over the world. Mm-hmm. And so what is your, at the end of the day, your intent is to maybe come back, set up a studio, pass on your knowledge, share it with other people. How do you paint Latinos of tomorrow? That was a conversation we started in my office. Where do you see us, AJ? You're in the imagery business. You're in that telling the story. What do you think our story is going to be? Let's close out with that. Where do you see that story taking us?
Well, that story is that story hasn't been told yet. And so I don't know. That's a good question. I think that I've always, I don't know, I think I always go back to these stories you used to tell us, or maybe during that time when we were at the programs. And I always like zeroed in on like Latinos being like the cosmic race. Like we're the solution. We're the mixture of everything. I always hated stories having like boundaries, or this person can't have this role because, I think that Latinos can do anything, and their story is all the stories. It's a story of unity. It's kind of hard. I've never really been asked this specific question. Thank you for giving me something to think about for the future. But I just think that it's showing that our culture has always been one of inclusion and a crossroads of cultures. And I see San Antonio, I see Texas as a representation of that as well. This has been a crossroads for centuries, and people are talking about it like this is a new thing now. What you have, I don't want to say the name, but you have Donald Trump saying that Mexicans are this. And I'm like, we are not this. We are everything. And I don't want for him to be the one telling our story. I want to be the one telling all the stories and not have any bounds on it. So that story is Latinos in space. It's, that's why I like Robert Rodriguez's approach to things, because it doesn't matter that they're Latino. They're just doing it, like Spy Kids and that kind of project, where that was always my vision, where I didn't feel like I had those boundaries on me. And NHI was a place where I realized how those boundaries were put in place and given a playground with which to experiment and learn those life skills. And it's about making that ecosystem in the world because it's on TV or in a movie theater, and you learn it subconsciously. Those messages the messages are of positivity and unity and achievement, which shouldn't have anything to do with our culture.
Well, I think you're going to pay the greatest compliment, AJ, to us when you write that story. And I agree. The best thing my wife and I have been able to do is put people in a space where they can create their story and not be told what their story ought to be, and not put any boundaries or limitations or ceilings, so that they can imagine what and who and when they want to become. I'll be interested in what you write. I'll be interested in what you film, and I'll be interested in what you produce. More than anything else, I want to thank you for taking the time, and I thank Gloria for staying in touch with you. Gloria does a magnificent job because she loves the NHI community very deeply. But I do want to finish with this, is that you will always be one of the LDZ gods. I think I have that mental picture stuck in my head.
Well, I have some photographs that I had blown up. I'll send you one. You can put it in your office.
Put it in my office. I would love to have the LDZ gods, because it was such a fun and enriching time. Thank you so much, AJ, for this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Ernie, for having me.
Again.
Julio.
Thank you, Julio.
Thanks a lot.
Tercera realidad, mi libertad. Mi tercera realidad no es vanidad. Un mundo mío es mi sueño. Un lugar feliz donde yo soy dueño. Donde yo soy rey, el encargado. Rey de mi vida y no el esclavo.
For more information on the National Hispanic Institute, please visit our website, www.nationalhispanicinstitute.org. Call us at 512-357-6137. Find us on Facebook at NHI HQ, or on Twitter, NHI_news, and at Instagram and Snapchat, NHI_news. Thank you to Union Pacific for their generous support as a sponsor of the NHI Podcast Network.